Good morning, everyone. Welcome to week 11. This week our topic is transport technology. So on the agenda for our theory session today, we're going to do a very quick review of relative clauses. You'll remember we studied those last week when we were reading about medical technology. And this week's topic, transport technology, and our grammar focus is on comparatives and superlatives. So if we do a quick review of relative clauses, there were two main times that we use relative clauses. They can join two English sentences together. So we have two sentences here. The sensors send information to a computer, and the computer is programmed to take action. So what we can do is take that second sentence and turn it into a relative clause and join it to the first sentence using a pronoun. And because it's about an object, we can use the pronoun which or that. So our new sentence is, the sensors send information to a computer which is programmed to take action. So you can see I use the pronoun which, and my relative clause is there in yellow. So two sentences into one. The other time that we might use relative clauses is to add more information to a sentence. So here's our subject sentence here. An engineer is an expert. In this particular case, we're talking about transport, so we might be thinking about engineers that design bridges and make more efficient fuel. So to add that extra information to the first sentence, we are going to use a relative clause. And because an engineer is a person, that means our pronoun needs to be that or who. So our new sentence is, an engineer is an expert who designs bridges and makes more efficient fuel. So I chose to use the pronoun who, but I could also have used that, and the relative clause is there in the yellow. So our warm-up questions for this week, if you could put your answers in the comments underneath the YouTube video, I will read them. I read them last week. Thank you for those people that take the time to write their answers in. What types of transport do you use regularly? So if I was answering that question, I could only say my car because that's the only kind of transport that I use. You might use more transport than I do or different types of transport. I'd also like you to think about why an effective public transport system is essential. So why is it essential to our cities and our suburbs and the places that we live to have effective public transport systems? So if you pop your answers in the comments underneath the YouTube video, we can share our ideas there. Our warm-up activity for this week is, particularly because you are all engineering students, I want you to think about something in the transport system where you live that could be improved, and what could you do as an engineer to improve the transport system? So I'm not sure what sorts of transport systems you have near where you live, but I'm sure there would be a way to improve them because there are always ways to improve things. So as an engineering student and as a future engineer, what could you do to improve the transport system where you live? And just pop your answer in the comments below. Okay, so this week, like I said, we are doing transport technology. The reading is in the YouTube comments below. You can click on the link that says Reading Transport Technology and the reading document will come up for you. Can you please, again, make an audio recording of yourself, because the best way to get better at reading English is to listen to how you sound. And when you hear something that doesn't sound quite right, you can keep on practicing that. So if you have your recording, you can do that. Like always, use a highlighter to mark out any words that you think are a bit tricky or you're not sure about, and we'll work on that on Thursday during our practicum. This week we have 8 questions for your comprehension, like we do every week, and like every other week, I'd like you to answer the questions in a full sentence. So make sure that your answer has all the information that we need. So if we use question 8 as an example, what common elements are used by hydrogen fuel cells? your answer would be the common elements used by hydrogen fuel cells are, and then write down your answer. All of the answers are in the reading, so you won't need to look anything up. Just keep looking in the reading and you will find the answers that you need. Okay, this week we're going to have a bit of a look at some different reading skills. So the first reading skill we're going to look at is skimming. So skimming is reading rapidly to get a general overview of the material. So when you're skimming something, you're not reading every word on the page. You're just running your eyes over all of the words on the page just quickly. So you can look at the headings, the captions, the illustrations, and the topic sentences. So the first sentence of the paragraph will tell you what the paragraph is about. Captions are the words in a box underneath pictures, illustrations, photographs, graphs. You can get information from them too. So when you're skimming, you're only reading small parts of the text so you can get an idea of what it is about. A look at an example now. So here's my reading, and I just skim over the top of that reading. I can see straight away from the heading that this reading is about hydrogen fuel. And then when I have a look down, I can see a couple of headings that says hydrogen trains. So that tells me that maybe trains can be run using hydrogen fuel. And then over here, I can see it says fuel cell cars. So that makes me know that this reading is going to tell me about cars that run from hydrogen fuel cells. And then if I look at the picture up the top there, I can see that it's the back of a car with exhaust coming out of the pipe. So that makes me think that maybe this reading is going to have some information about pollution as well. So I haven't read the article, I've just skimmed through it, but I have a good idea of what that article is about. Try that with a second example. So this time our reading is about shale gas. I don't know what shale gas is, so I'm going to skim through and see what other information I'm going to get. So I can see here it says, what is shale gas? So if I read that information there in that paragraph, I'll find out what shale gas is. And then it talks about something called fracking. I don't know what fracking is. Then we move on to the advantages of shale gas. So what's good about it? Why do we need it? And then what are the problems with fracking? So I don't know what the problems with fracking are, but if I read that information, I would. So I've skimmed over that reading, and now I know that reading is about shale gas, the problems with it, and the difficulties with fracking. So the second skill we're going to look at is called scanning. So scanning is reading rapidly to find specific facts. So it's different to skimming, because when we skim, we're just looking overall to try and find out what the reading is about. When we're scanning, we're looking for a particular word or a quote or precise information to give us more information. So scanning, you're looking for something special. Skimming, you're just looking at the reading overall. So we would just do one quick example of scanning. So we're going back to the hydrogen fuel cells, and there they are. And my question is about fuel cell cars. So that's what I want to find out about. I'm going to scan through, and there I can see fuel cell cars. And if I read that paragraph underneath there, I can write up my information. Most companies are researching into power alternatives to reduce global warming. Not everyone believes hydrogen fuel cells are the answer. So now I know about fuel cell cars, and I didn't read the whole article. I scanned through until I found the words that I needed, and then I read that piece of information. Right, our grammar focus for this week is comparatives and superlatives. So when we're describing nouns, we use adjectives. You remember nouns are people, objects, animals, things. They're the words we use for them. Adjectives are the words we use to describe nouns. So if we wanted to use comparatives, that's when we're looking at two things together to describe them. So here we have, here's our adjective in pink is small. The comparative is smaller because we're comparing it to the small one. And then the superlative is the smallest. So the superlative is the most of something. So I've got some little pictures here. So here is a small motorbike. But if I compare it to the next one, this one is smaller. And then the next one, this one is the smallest. So I've got my adjective, my comparative, and my superlative. So that's the smallest bike. Another example would be funny is my adjective, funnier, and funniest. So you might think about TV shows or movies that you enjoy that are funny. And so here, if something's funny, I might just be smiling. But if it's funnier, I might start to laugh because I'm comparing it to the first one. And if it's the funniest, which means it's the most funny of all, that would be funniest. So I've got funny, funnier, and funniest. Another way that we can do comparatives and superlatives is to use an extra word with the adjective. So here my adjective is interesting, and I'm going to say more interesting and most interesting. And we need to do that because when the word is like interesting, we can't say interestinger because that's not how English works. So instead of writing interestinger, we write more interesting and most interesting because that's the way we say it in English. So to help out with comparatives and superlatives and which way to do it, we have got some rules. So rule number one is for adjectives that are just one syllable, so a word like small, we add ER for the comparative and EST for the superlative. So here's your example. Our adjective is small. That's just one sound in the word, so that's one syllable. And when we compare that, it's smaller, we added ER. And when it's the most of all, when it's the superlative, we add EST. So we've got small, smaller, and smallest. So that's rule number one. When the adjective is one syllable, that's the rule that we use. Our second rule is for two-syllable adjectives that end in Y. So that would be words like funny that we already used. So when it ends in Y, we have to change the Y to an I, and then we use the same rules. We add ER or EST. So let's look at our example again. Here's funny, that's my adjective, and you can see that funny ends in a Y. So to make the comparative, I change the Y to an I, and then I put my ER on. So it says funnier. And to make the superlative, again, I change the Y to an I and add EST. So it's funniest. So that's rule number two. When it's two syllables ending in a Y, we have to change the spelling a little bit. And rule number three. This is for two-syllable adjectives or adverbs that don't end in Y, and for all the adjectives and adverbs that have three or more syllables. That's when we have to use more plus the adjective or most plus the adjective. Just like in our first example where we had interesting. Interesting has got all those syllables. Interesting. So three syllables. So it meets this rule. So our example here is, our adjective is explosive, which is explosive. So that's three syllables. So we need to use the third rule. So I can't say explosiver because that's not how we do it in English. I need to say more explosive for the comparative and most explosive for the superlative. So we can't say explosivest because that's not correct. We need to say most explosive because explosive has three syllables. And then, of course, because it's English, there are some irregular adjectives that don't follow the rules, and we just have to know what they are. So the first example is good. In English, we don't say gooder and goodest because that's not how we speak. So if our adjective is good, the comparative is better and the superlative is best. So we say good, better, best. And there's no rule for that one. We just need to know it. So next slide, I've got a table that shows you the irregular adjectives and adverbs and how we can do the comparative and the superlative. So if you want to use them, you can just have a look at the table because the rules do not apply to these ones. So you can see our first row, the adjective is bad, the comparative is worse, and the superlative is worst. So it doesn't follow any of the rules. And then the adjective far, meaning far away, there's two different ways we can do the comparative and the superlative. We can say farther and farthest. So you could say the hospital is farthest from my house, or we can use further and furthest. So either of those ones are correct. So that's why there's two examples in the table. When the adjective is many, we say more or most, just like we do when we're adding it to an adjective. And if the adjective is little, we say less or least. That's if we're talking about little being a small amount. So we don't say littler and littlest when we're talking about amounts. We talk less and least. So just go back and have a look at those tables. They're the ones that we have to memorize. All right, so if we pop on to our last one here, here is a table that I would like you to have a go at completing using the rules that we just talked about. Now, there's a link to this activity in the comments box beneath the YouTube video. So you can click on that, and on the worksheet, it lists what the rules are. So you can look at that for the rules. You don't have to keep on going back through the video to see the rules. And remember, you're looking at how many syllables are in the word and what letter the word finishes in. So remember, if it's a Y, you usually have to change that to an I. If it's got 3 or more syllables, then you need to use more and most. And if it's 1 syllable, we use ER and EST. So if everyone could try to complete that table, we will go through it together on Thursday. And if you get a little bit stuck, don't worry, superlatives and comparatives are difficult when you first start using them, so we will need to do a lot of practice. So for our practicum lesson on this Thursday, please make sure that you have done the reading, Transport Technology. Make sure you answer the questions on slide 8 because I will be asking different people to share their answers and you need to share your screen, so make sure you have them typed up. With skimming and scanning, maybe you could find some articles that you're using for your study and just try using that as a technique. Skim over the article to see what it's about, or if you need some specific information, you could scan for those words, because if you can learn to do that, you save yourself a lot of time. And finally, we have our grammar focus, comparatives and superlatives. So I'd like you to complete the table on slide 23, and remember that's also available as a Word document in the comments below the YouTube video. So thank you everybody for listening. That's the end of our theory lesson for today. You can see our reference list there. Have a go at all of those activities. Please remember to write up your comments in the comments section below the YouTube video. So thank you for coming along, and I will see everybody on Thursday at our practicum.